Hello friends, welcome to my podcast. My name is Barbara Radzevikas and this is Bondi Crafter. In this is another special episode. It's to carry on from an earlier episode where I was applying a binding to a quilt. So in this episode I decided to finish off the binding for this quilt, and I'm doing it by machine, so I'm going to quilt this one by machine too, and I've put the binding on by machine. So it's really I think it's really an important step in when you're going to machine quilt the way I do, because it keeps all the layers together and everything is pinned together, but I don't put the binding on as the last step. I do it as second last step. So when it's quilted, it's finished and it's ready to go. And this quilt is for using, maybe the visitor's bed. So it will be washed and it'll be put in the machine. It won't be handled with kid gloves. So the pattern also I think I should talk about, because the pattern for this quilt is a Jacob's ladder. It's one of my all-time favorite patterns, I've got to say. And I really like the idea and the philosophy behind Jacob's ladder. In the Torah, Jacob rests his head and dreams of a ladder to heaven. And it's somewhat like sleeping, when you go to sleep, you've gone somewhere and you don't know where. So hopefully it's to heaven and you return when you wake up down the ladder. So this pattern, the ladder is in the pattern, and the ladder goes in my quilts, from the left-hand corner to the right-hand top corner. And I just love it because it's perfect for scrap quilts, which is what I make. I make scrap quilts. I don't make whole quilts or quilts just from one piece of fabric or 3 pieces of fabric. I use 50 or 100 different pieces of fabric, maybe more sometimes. This one is so beautiful, and I've had it in the pile to be quilted for a fair while, so it's its day. I will also I'll also make a special episode about machine quilting, and it'll be machine quilting this quilt. So I have to go over to Judith and use her Sweet 16. I love using the Sweet 16. It's a beautiful machine, and Judith very kindly lets me use it, and so kind. And for this size quilt, which is reasonably big, it will take me probably 2 hours to quilt. That'll be non-stop. So I will sit down and I will just float off into quilting heaven. Okay, this is the next big quilt that I'm going to machine quilt. I'm going to take it over to Judith, but before that, so I've got to do the binding. I'm going to show how to do that today. But this is a Jacob's ladder, mainly in K facet fabrics, I would say. It's very pretty. This morning I'm going to finish the binding off on this quilt. This is a really nice one, but I'm not going to hand quilt this one. I'm going to machine quilt it. And before I machine quilt it, I have to finish doing the binding. I've already sewn it round once to have it on at a 3/8 seam on the edge here. And I will fold it over. I've got my black thread in at the moment, so this is what's happening today. This is probably a tutorial in quilting in a small space. So I'm going to turn my binding over now. I've already trimmed the back so that it's nice and neat. And when I turn my bias over, it neatly covers the whole edge. This quilt is approximately 70 inches square. Could be 75 by 70. I think I might have that. Just make sure that this is how I want it. And we set off. I'm not in a real rush to get it done. I just want to make sure that all of this binding on this side is the same width. I want to end with this needle down, and there you see, I'll do a bit more first. I'll show the front. I like sewing the binding on with the machine in this way because this will be a utility quilt and it'll be used pretty frequently and washed. Not a lot, but you know, a few times a year. And if you have the quilt, you know, comfortably in your lap, and that there is no pull on your arms. So I'll just trim where I started. And as you can see, or not, when you sew how I have, you don't see the stitching because the black melts into the black of the binding. It doesn't sew the actual binding. So I think it's a rather neat edge, you know, for a utility quilt. And that is how it looks on this side. So, you know, it's pretty neat. I just have to go all around the edge, which will take me like, I would say 3/4 of an hour because I don't sew really that fast with borders and binding. Just a word about my binding before I do the corner. I've made this binding myself from 2.5 inch width fabric, and it's all K-facet pieces of leftover. So I like to do that with the binding. I think it makes it a nice binding if it's not all the one piece. So we're coming up to the corner. I'm going to miter it. And when we get to the corner here, I'm just going to snip just that piece there because that is a lot of fabric for my little old sewing machine to sew through. And I want to get it really neat because I like neat corners. So coming up to it now, I'm about 1 inch away. I need my needle in. And I'm going to fold it this way, and then I'm going to fold it over. I can feel I've got a bit of a lump, but it doesn't matter. And as long as everything is encased in the corner, my fingers have arthritis, so, you know, we make allowances for that. And when I'm right at the corner, I like to sew into the miter and back out again, you know, just to keep everything in its place. I'll keep going down here a bit. Also, the back is a batik fabric, which is nice and soft. It's been washed because batik tends to shrink a bit. And this is my corner. You see, it's a nice angle there, and on the other side, it all looks good. So, yeah, now we'll keep going. This is my trusty sewing machine. I've had it for about 8 years now. It's a little Burnett Seville in black. If you've seen the movie You've Got Mail, you will see how, is it You've Got Mail? No. What's the other one? What's the other Meg Ryan movie? Not You've Got Mail, but
Sleepless in Seattle.
No. Oh, hang on. This is my trusty sewing machine. It's a little Burnett Seville. It's a brother, I think. I love it. I've had it about 8 years. And if you've seen the movie You've Got Mail with Meg Ryan, which I really like about, there are certain elements in it that I like, the bookshop and the guy on his typewriter. If you've seen that movie, I feel the same way about my sewing machine as he does about his typewriter. I love my sewing machine. It is just the best little thing. I love it. It's so straight every time. It's so easy to fix. If something stops sewing, there is only 2 things that can be wrong. So it is perfect. This is how the binding ends up. This is a better mitre that I do. This is the second one. I get better as I go along, and that's how it looks on the front. So yeah, pretty happy with it. Just about finished with the binding. I've got 5 inches to go. It's so good to see the end. It's only taken me about half an hour. In that time, they got a bit hot. So turn the heater off. Now all my batting is enclosed. Have a closer look. My camera phone is picking up a lot of pink in the batik, where it's basically blue. But the good thing about the binding is it has pink and blue in it also. Ooh. And here is the other side. Looks great. Yeah. All encased, ready to machine quilt. Still got all the pins in. Okay, I am up to the next stage, but I thought we would like to have a look at the front of this quilt because it's a really nice Jacob's ladder pattern. So I made the triangles are 4.5 inch squares cut in half, and the squares are a ton of 2.5 inch squares. For the border, I just had strips, but when it came to here, I pieced the borders also. I think they're called borders. I particularly love these cave facet fabrics because they all go together no matter what they are, but these are all warmer shades. There are a few cool ones in it. Nice blues. But you'll see the ladders all go this way. And there's a nice philosophical idea behind a Jacob's ladder quilt. You know, you sleep under the dream. I particularly like this block. The nice reds and pansies are beautiful. But all the colours are lovely. What do you think of this pattern? It's very easy to make. It's a 12.5 inch block. Just triangles and squares. But when made up, it looks spectacular. I had 10 years of making Jacob's ladders, so I think they're just beautiful. Me signing off for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it will give you some inspiration, maybe. Maybe it will give you some help in finishing off a quilt faster or easier. It's not about fast, really. It's about completion. Some quilts need to be completed. I'm sure you all understand this. Completion is excellent. And everything needs to be completed. If it's not completed, you know, it goes somewhere else and someone else kindly completes it or use it for some other purpose. But for me, completing is excellent. Thanks for joining me. Me signing off. Bye.